You're listening to Finding Your Future in Food Systems.
All right, welcome to NAFSN. The North American Food Systems Network is a professional association of people working to strengthen local and regional food systems. We work at the forefront of the profession itself, providing networking opportunities, tools, trainings, webinars, career guidance, and a comprehensive jobs board. We encourage you to join NAFSN if you value a diverse, well-informed, place-based workspace at the helm of this critical change work. We also want to acknowledge this. Many of the organizations and agencies that do the work of strengthening their local food systems, including farmers, are currently under political duress. Undue and inhumane funding cuts to sustainable agriculture and food access programs threaten our profession and America's overall food security. It is with determination that we continue to host this series so that more and more people understand how essential these roles are to the vitality of local communities, the health of those communities, and the responsible care of Earth's natural resources. We would like to thank you all for joining us for the second episode of our pilot long-form version of Finding Your Future in Food Systems. Now, in our 9th season, we will continue our popular 3-speaker episodes, in addition to adding several longer, pre-recorded single-speaker episodes like this one. The focus of this pilot series is on companies and organizations redefining how business is done within the food and agricultural sectors. And to highlight the incredible diversity present within the food system space, we have broadened our scope and extended invitations to international leaders as well as student-led initiatives. Finding Your Future in Food Systems will continue to be produced and hosted by students while we aim to help emerging professionals and others navigate the wide range of quickly evolving career opportunities in community food systems work. My name is Jeffrey, a third-year food science and global development major at Cornell University and a student staff member at NAFSN. For this special episode, I am also joined by Aya behind the camera. Aya is a second-year student in the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell and a technician for the Finding Your Future in Food Systems series. Before we get started, we'd like to sincerely thank the season sponsor, FarmWise, a value chain development initiative at Indiana University. We'd also like to acknowledge and appreciate our year-round sponsors, Grapevine Local Food Marketing, Roots of Change, Cliff Family Foundation, and Harrisdale Homestead. NAFSN is headquartered in Ithaca, New York, and we offer this land acknowledgement created by Cornell University's American Indian and Indigenous Studies program, reviewed and approved by the traditional Gayakono leadership. Cornell University is located on the traditional homelands of the Gayakono of the Cayuga Nation. The Gayakono are members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, an alliance of 6 sovereign nations with a historic and contemporary presence on this land. The Confederacy precedes the establishment of Cornell University, New York State, the United States of America, and we acknowledge the painful history of the Gayakono dispossession and honor the ongoing connection of Gayakono people, past and present, to these lands and waters. We are honored and very excited to be filming in person today in Anabel's Grocery, another project of the Center for Transformative Action, just like NAFSN. We are joined today by Trisha Budgley, a teaching assistant for Anabel's Grocery, a course that is offered in the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management. Trisha is an undergraduate senior at Cornell University, where she studies environment and sustainability with a dual focus on sustainable food systems and conservation social science. Since August 2023, she has been involved with Anabel's Grocery, a nonprofit student-run grocery store at Cornell, first as a coordinator of the purchasing committee and later as a United Nations Millennium Fellow and teaching assistant. Trisha's interest in food systems extends beyond Anabel's. She's spent 2 summers in Tanzania working with smallholder farmers who lose their crops to wild animals. She has learned to hunt, fish, and cook invasive or overpopulated species through a sustainable use research lab at Cornell, and has even harvested ostrich eggs in South Africa in an effort to fully embrace the farm-to-table movement. Very nice. At and beyond Cornell, she hopes to contribute to innovative solutions that enable fresh, affordable, and nutritious food to make that accessible to all. So thank you very much for joining us and for hosting us today in this beautiful space, Trisha, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jeffrey, for the lovely introduction and for a description of NAFSN. My name is Trisha. I'm a senior at Cornell. While I primarily focus on wildlife conservation, I found Annabelle's to be a great opportunity for me to explore my interests in food systems as well. And this is really where I grew an interest in learning about community food systems. Like Jeffrey said, I got involved with Annabelle's in my sophomore fall. So 2 years ago, I started by taking a class in the Dyson School of Economics called Social Entrepreneurship Practicum. And that's what really introduced me to the store and how to run a store and what it means to operate a nonprofit social enterprise. I really, really loved my experience here while I was taking the class. I was working in something called vendor relations, where I would get to contact our vendors every week, place orders from them, get to learn how to price produce items at a reasonable price. And so, because of that, I chose to continue working at Anabel's after I finished the class. And took on a leadership role as a purchasing coordinator for a year. And now I'm here as a teaching assistant for that class and very excited to be here with both of you.
All right. So I guess a couple of questions to start off here, Trisha. Could you talk a little bit more about the history of Annabelle's, how it sort of came to be? Because I think it's in its what, ninth year?
Yeah, so the history of Annabelle's goes all the way back to 2014. So in 2014, there were two students at Cornell whose names are Matt Stefanko and Emma Johnston. They were actually on the Cornell Undergraduate Student Assembly, and they had noticed from a survey of Cornell undergraduates that over 20% of undergraduates at Cornell were skipping meals due to some kind of constraint. So that led them to propose the creation of an on-campus grocery store. Granted, creating an on-campus grocery store is no small feat, and it took several years for the student assembly to pass a resolution that would enable Annabelle's to be created. It took a while to convince Cornell's administration that this was something that the students wanted, and of course, it also took a while to build the infrastructure of the store and get all the things that we need to really run a functioning grocery store. So Annabelle's didn't open its doors until fall of 2017, 3 years after the idea was proposed, and the two students who proposed the creation of the grocery store had graduated by the time it opened. Um, Nonetheless, Annabelle's quickly gained a lot of traction and grew since 2017. We received some funding from the undergraduate and graduate student assemblies here at Cornell to get our feet off the ground. We did have to take a pause from operations during the heat of COVID, but in fall 2021, we resumed operations and we've been growing ever since.
Very nice. So you had mentioned that up to 20% of students when sorry, what was
Emma.
Emma, were working on, that was sort of the basis for why they wanted to have Annabelle's. Can you describe what Annabelle's impact has been since actually getting established and operating?
Yeah, of course. So when referring to that 20%, Annabelle's really tries to address a couple of pain points when it comes to access to food and equitable access to food. So one of those pain points is time. For a lot of students, they just don't have the time to travel off campus to go buy groceries. Some grocery stores are pretty far away and it takes time just to go there and come back, especially if you don't have a car or a vehicle of your own. Annabelle's is very convenient because we're located right on campus at a location that a lot of students pass by every day. And so time was one of those pain points we were trying to address. Another one is money. Food in Ithaca, New York can be very expensive. Certain grocery stores charge at very high prices, and not everyone can afford to pay those prices. So here at Annabelle's, we subsidize for most of our nutritious items, especially essential items like produce and whole grains and legumes. And that is essentially just to make these products as accessible as possible to students with potential financial constraints. Another pain point we address is transportation. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, most of us don't have cars, and for most of us, it is quite a hassle to go off campus to buy groceries. And so having a grocery store on campus that has all of the essentials that a student needs to cook is a huge convenience for students here.
So part of the reason why we wanted to highlight Annabelle's on this series was because all of the different partnerships that purchasing committee and the class has developed over the years with local vendors. Could you say a little bit, speak to that aspect a little bit more?
Yeah, of course. I was a purchasing coordinator at Anabel's for a year, so I was heavily involved in getting to meet and adding new vendors to the store. So over 80% of our vendors at Anabel's are local, and we currently have 25 vendors. Um, by local, I mean people who operate in the Ithaca area or in broader Tompkins County. So that includes a lot of local farms, such as Fort Baptist Farm and Remembrance Farm. It also includes local bakeries, so things like Wide Awake Bakery and Ithaca Bakery. When I was a purchasing coordinator, we added a new gluten-free bakery based here in Ithaca called Lori's Grain-Free Bakehouse because we wanted to make sure that we were providing baked goods and fresh bread to the gluten-free community as well. Um, so that is kind of an example of like the local vendors that we offer here. And having those local partnerships has been really valuable just for students here to get to know where their food comes from and for us to feel more connected to the source of our food.
And with working with local vendors, like on paper, it might sound perfect, but have any challenges arisen from that process? And if so, how did you and the purchasing team tackle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think with any kind of like when you're working with so many vendors,
Mhm.
challenges are bound to arise. We've had instances where, for example, we've had a delivery come in of produce that was moldy, and it wasn't really the vendor's fault. And so that was an instance in which we trained our students to be able to contact the vendor and explain to them what went wrong and ask for a refund. So really, it's about capacity building for the students in the class to feel like they have the agency to make purchasing decisions, to contact vendors when things don't go
Mhm.
as planned, to be able to adapt to situations that don't go as planned. Um, we've had a lot of funny situations too. I always tell a funny story about when I meant to order 90 jars of kimchi, but we had a delivery of 900. Um, and that was kind of a shocker for everyone. And it's something that we laugh about now, but in the moment it was pretty scary. And so we at Annabelle's we try to always forgive and we try to learn from mistakes. And that's definitely an example of just us adjusting, even as students learning how to operate something that's so big and has such an outsized impact. And so there are always little things that go wrong in the process, but what matters is that we learn to adjust.
So how are other students involved? Because you had mentioned that you were more so on the purchasing side, both as a coordinator and as a student with vendor relations. But there are up to what 33 students at most who have taken the class in a semester. So could you talk about where how everyone sort of fits into that picture?
Yeah, of course. So purchasing is just a very small part of how what is needed for Annabelle's to operate. We have four committees that work together to run the store. So there's purchasing, then there's operations, collaboration and education, and marketing. So operations is really responsible for making sure that the logistics of running the store go smoothly. So doing things like setting up shift schedules, making sure that the appliances are in operation and that our cash registers are working smoothly, making sure barcodes are made, things like that. And then there's collaboration and education, which works on more of our educational programs that we offer apart from the grocery store. So that includes things like farm tours with our local farms, cooking demos, creating meal kits for students, and hosting free community dinners that are accessible to people at the Cornell in the Cornell community and beyond. So that's really a way for us to spread awareness of not only the store but also the value of a local food system. And then finally, there's the marketing committee, which runs our website and our social media and our newsletters just to make sure that students and all of our customers are kept up to date on programs that Annabelle's is hosting, new products in the store, and any other happenings within the Annabelle's community.
It's a lot of different responsibilities for a lot of different a lot of students who are involved. So with all of these sort of moving pieces, how do you ensure consistency or accountability, or how do you make sure that things don't fall through the cracks?
Yeah, so we because we have such a big team, it's important for us to all remain in communication with each other, especially because we also have returning members who work at the store who aren't
Oh,
necessarily in the Annabelle's force. And so keeping that communication going is really important. This is part of the reason we have all staff meetings. So they're an opportunity for all of the Anabel staff to come together, past and present, and talk about things that are happening at the store, talk about initiatives that students are leading, just so that everyone can be on the same page and so that students have the opportunity to support each other and to collaborate. We also communicate very regularly through an online channel called Slack, which is just a great way for us to ask each other questions, give each other advice, and make sure that everyone is up to date on things happening in the store, things going wrong, small changes that need to be made. So it's a great way for us to all make sure that we're in constant communication.
So I was also reading online that Annabelle says become very involved in, like, let's say, well, I guess like the green movement, where you're trying to source locally. You have become very conscious about like your environmental impact and carbon emissions. Could you speak to that aspect a little more?
Yeah, of course. So this is actually part of the project that I did when I was a United Nations Millennium Fellow through Anabel's. So my project was really focused on trying to enhance the sustainability aspect of the store. And so one of the ways that we aimed to do that was through the implementation of a reusable container initiative.
Hmm.
And so we incentivize our customers to bring their own containers for bulk goods. We sell things like legumes and nuts and rice and grains in bulk quantities. And while we do offer plastic containers that consumers can purchase for those bulk products, we also incentivize people to bring their own so that they don't have to pay for a container. And so by bringing their own reusable container, people not only save money, but they also minimize plastic use. We do something similar for egg cartons. We encourage people to bring their own egg cartons. We encourage people to bring their own reusable bags and mugs for things like kombucha and other beverages. And so this reusable container initiative has been really valuable, in just encouraging people to reuse rather than to take and waste.
Hmm.
And take and waste is such a common model, but we're trying to strive towards the circularity and the aspect of the circular economy that we really desire.
And how has that been perceived by the Cornell community?
I would say so far it's been perceived very, very well. We haven't gotten an extensive amount of feedback in general on this initiative, even though a lot of people are participating. I can speak from my experiences on shifts, and the experiences I've had with customers. I used to work on a Saturday shift last semester, and at the start of the semester, none of my customers were using reusable containers, but I found that I had consistency in who was coming to the store on Saturdays, and I reminded customers that we have this reusable container initiative, and by the end of the semester, most of my customers were bringing their own.
Oh, nice.
So it's definitely something that with repeated promotion of the initiative, people started to adopt it further and further by the end of the semester.
So a recurring theme that I keep hearing you mention is this sort of idea of social capital. You mentioned the social capital, or the resilience that you have built with your connections that Annabelle's has with the vendors. You've talked about the interactions and sort of the social capital that you've built with the customers that frequent your shifts. But could you talk about maybe are there any other aspects, like other student organizations, other partnerships, or even partnerships with other like Cornell units or departments that have come into play in making Annabelle's a success?
Yeah, of course, there are many. Um, Annabelle's really loves to partner with other groups on and off campus, and that's one of the things that makes our store really unique.
Mhm.
And I can speak to a couple of the ways that we've partnered with other groups. One example is Dillman Hill Student Farm. This is a student-run farm on Cornell's campus, run by undergraduate students. They actually supply a large amount of our produce every fall semester, and they harvest everything from eggplant to tomatoes to peppers to garlic. So we're very fortunate to have a source of produce right here on Cornell's campus, and we've built a very strong partnership with our friends at Dillman Hill over the past couple of semesters. Something that's really cool about our relationship with Dillman Hill is that they provide us produce, and we don't have to pay them for it. And so what we do is we take 75% of our profits from Dillman's produce and we contribute that to a fund called the Anti-Racism Action Fund. And we give the other 25% of our profits back to Dillman so they can reinvest it into the farm. For that anti-racism action grant, that's a grant program run entirely by us here at Anabel's, and we offer small micro grants to different initiatives on and off campus that are striving towards anti-racism through projects that they're leading. So that is one example of a really cool partnership that we've been fortunate to grow. Another example is the Free Food Fridge. The Free Food Fridge is an initiative right outside of the grocery store, actually. It's a community fridge that anyone is welcome to use, and also anyone is welcome to donate to it. Anabel started this fridge in collaboration with a few other student organizations, such as the Basic Needs Coalition, and the Dillman Hill Student Farm, actually. And this has grown in popularity as well because a lot of students who are food insecure have become very reliant on this resource for free food. So these are just kind of some examples of partnerships we've built centered around the idea of mutual support, and that have been able to raise awareness of Anabel's in the process as well.
So I hope you don't mind me asking this next question, but when you had mentioned sort of where the proceeds from the sales go, for Dillman in particular, 75% goes to the Anti-Racism Fund, and then 25% is returned to Dillman Hill. So I guess my question is, what does Anabel's do to stay in the green, or at least not go so deep into the red? I mean, money's not everything, but at the end of the day, you also have to have some type of cash flow for these refrigerators, for the other produce that you're purchasing from vendors. Could you maybe expand on that a bit?
Yeah, of course. So as a nonprofit, we don't necessarily aim to make a profit on any of our products, and we intentionally don't upcharge on anything. Of course, with that in mind, because we have a lot of operational costs from everything from like electricity to credit card bills and all of the logistical costs that come with running a store, we do often run in the red. But to make sure that we're not constantly incurring a loss, we primarily run through donations and fundraising. And we do some very aggressive fundraising every semester. So last semester, for example, for Cornell Giving Day, that's a day when the entire Cornell community rallies together to gather donations for student organizations and initiatives. And so Anabel's raised over $20,000 on Giving Day last semester. And so that's quite a substantial amount of money that enables us to run for quite a while. We've also received large grants from the undergraduate and graduate student assembly. These are the same grants we received back when Anabel's was starting to get off the ground, and we still haven't we're still going through that grant money because we don't need an extensive amount of money to run every semester. And so because of that, various grants and fundraising efforts are really what enable us to continue to remain in operation and have all the initiatives that we provide.
So where do you get the students to actually, or the folks to actually run the store? Like, where do they come from? You had mentioned returning members, but
right. So there are we have a new batch of around 30 students every semester who run the store, and we recruit them through a course at Cornell in the Dyson School called Social Entrepreneurship Practicum. And so that course attracts students from freshman year to senior year. There are no prerequisites to take it. Anyone is welcome to take it, and we encourage people outside of the Dyson School, so people of any major and of any interest, to take the class. Something that we found really valuable is that people in other disciplines outside of applied economics, so disciplines like environmental science and nutrition and government and public health, all have something valuable to contribute to the Anabel's community. To raise awareness of the course, we do a lot of tabling at club fairs and other events just so that students can be aware that this is an opportunity that exists. And the course is also offered both semesters, so there are ample opportunities for students to take it.
So how did you get involved? Because you're not your background isn't in business or Dyson. You're ENS. So how did you talk a little bit about how you found the course?
Yeah, so I learned about Anabel's at the end of my freshman year, and it was because I met a student who was a senior at the time, who was heavily involved in Anabel's and who was also studying environment and sustainability like me. I just happened to run into him at my advisor's office. And while we were waiting for my advisor, he was just telling me about working at Anabel's and about what Anabel's has meant to him. And that was my first time hearing of the store, but I thought it sounded really cool. So I did some digging myself and applied for the class. And I was very lucky to be able to take it the next semester.
What do you mean you had to apply for the course?
So there's just a form that you need to fill out if you want to take the course, where you write about what you're interested in, why you're interested in working in a food system,
Okay.
and what you think you could contribute to the class. It's not meant to be a very stressful application process like most other applications. It's just an opportunity. It's just an opportunity for you to share the kinds of things you're interested in, so that we can try to have like a well-rounded class every
Hmm.
semester.
So could you talk a little bit more about how the class is set up? Sure, students are on these committees and they contribute that way, and then they work in the store. But what is the class about other than running a grocery store?
Yeah, of course. So running a grocery store is actually only a small part of the social
Hmm.
entrepreneurship practicum class. The class also focuses on learning about the food system as a whole, and potential inequities and malpractice within the food system. So you get to engage with a lot of guest speakers throughout the semester. Some of those guest speakers include some of our local vendors, and other guest speakers include
Uh-huh.
people who may not even live in Ithaca but have made waves in the food system. There are a lot of readings and New York Times articles and other resources that students are encouraged to read and sometimes required to read and discuss. And a lot of time in class is spent talking about how to build a better food system, not only through Anabel's, but through other initiatives and other nonprofits as well. The class is also a great way to learn about other forms of food justice and food enterprise happening in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, and seeing how Anabel's can learn from those initiatives and seeing how we can draw connections between Anabel's and those
Hmm.
initiatives.
So a good chunk of our viewer base are current students who are in university, who are very interested in food systems, and something like Annabelle's might seem like something that they would like to bring back to their home university, or some similar initiative to get involved in. So what recommendations do you have for someone who might be thinking, yeah, I would like to have a space like Annabelle's at my university, or any words of wisdom or words of caution that you might be able to impart?
That's a good question. Over my time working at
Hmm.
Annabelle's, we've had a couple of students at other universities reach out to us because they've heard about us in some way or another, and they've asked us a similar question as you because they're curious and they would like to start something like this in their universities. And what I would suggest is go for it. I will say it's no small undertaking. Matt and Emma, who had this idea, didn't even get to see the store come to fruition before they graduated, and it took several years for it to become what it is now. Um, I know that administrative pushback is always a possibility, especially with something so big like a grocery store. It's very rare and uncommon for a college campus to have a student-run grocery store, and that's for understandable reasons because there are always things that could potentially go wrong.
Hmm.
With that said, food insecurity is a pervasive problem, not only on Cornell's campus, but throughout the country and throughout other universities as
Hmm.
well. So finding innovative ways to address that, that go beyond just food pantries and expand to other solutions is really important. So I'm always excited to hear about other people's ideas for
Hmm.
how to, if not bring a grocery store model, how to bring some kind of initiative that transforms their university's food system to their campus. And I have no doubt that it's challenging, but it's definitely something worth doing.
So what was the magical combination? Because Cornell University um is so large, and there's so many layers of administrators, and there's so many different departments who all have their hands in different rules and different regulations. So what was the magical combination that Matt and Emma and the other founders of Annabelle's used to sort of make it all happen, or have them say yes? Because you had said that initially there was also grant money that was seeded in as well. So like this required a lot of different yeses.
The magic was definitely CTA, or the Center for Transformative Action, which
Huh.
NAFSIN is also a part of.
Small world.
So yeah, small world. So, CTA very kindly agreed to take on Anabel's as one of its projects so that Cornell wouldn't have to accept the legal or fiscal responsibility for running Anabel's. And so CTA actually is invaluable to our store. CTA staff take care of some of the back end work that is beyond the capacity of undergraduate students, especially because undergrads have such a constant turnover. So CTA does things like handling our legal work, handling our taxation, and our bookkeeping. They hold our USDA grocery store license so that we're inspected just like a typical grocery store like Wegmans, for example. They also hold our SNAP EBT license, which enables us to be the only service on campus that accepts SNAP EBT. And
Wow.
so because of that, because CTA was willing to take on that responsibility, and because there was a small group of students willing to help with the ideation of the store and the creation of the store and conceptualization of what this would be, those were really the two magical pieces that enabled Anabel's to come together.
Hi, did you have a question as well?
Yes, I was wondering. So you previously mentioned that there's a lot that can go wrong with grocery store. So how do you ensure that there are some things in place that like prevent it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because things do go wrong inevitably, especially when you have such a large team running something so complex. And I have a lighthearted example and a less lighthearted example just to illustrate that. So for example, we have at the back of the store bulk bins that have things like rice and nuts and grains. And sometimes they break, or sometimes a student may not push them back hard enough and they're not locked into the structure that's holding them, and then they fall down. And we had that happen once during my shift.
Okay.
And so one of the, I think it was granola, it fell, and over 8 pounds of granola just scattered all over the floor of the store. And obviously we were terrified and mortified because that's a lot of granola to clean up while customers are walking through the store. But in the moment, we found a customer who was in the store who said she has a lot of chickens. She was an older woman, and she actually agreed to take all the granola that had fallen on the floor and feed it to her chickens.
Good.
So that's an example of how something went wrong and something didn't go as planned, but we found a solution to it, and we were actually able to prevent the food from being wasted, which was a cool bonus to the situation. Another example is accountability. Of course, when you have such a large team involved in this, it's important to hold people accountable. Um, it's inevitable that students sometimes miss their shifts, or students forget to do something that they're supposed to do, or work that has to happen to keep the store running falls through the cracks. Because as undergrads, we're of course very busy. We have exams, we have homework, we have lives, and sometimes we forget about the things that the small day-to-day things that are required in running a grocery store like Anabel's. And so when that happens, we have a lot of safeguards to try to keep things going. So, for example, if a student is unable to make their shift to the store, we have a system where students can swap shifts with other students so that we make sure that all shifts are staffed at all times. If we notice that a student isn't showing up or fulfilling their responsibilities, we reach out to them and we ask them what's going on. We ask them if there's a way we can support them. We ask them if there's something that they need training on. So we have a team of not only people who are experienced, but also people who are here to support students, especially because this is a big responsibility and we want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable fulfilling their responsibilities and supported in fulfilling those responsibilities.
So, what do you think the impact of Annabelle's has been over the course when, both with the course and with the store operations? How do you think that's impacted both the Cornell community directly or indirectly, as well as maybe like the Ithaca community, since you're working with so many different vendors and other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about this. I feel like I've been very fortunate to engage with various people at Cornell and beyond on the topic of Annabelle's. I'll start with Cornell. So here, a lot of students come up to me and tell me how much they appreciate Annabelle's and how much they value being able to come here to shop for groceries, especially people who live off campus, don't have a car. For them, this is a really valuable resource to have. There are therapists at Cornell Health who have told me that they recommend some of their students to come shop to Anabel's, especially students who are food insecure. And so that has had an impact there. There are professors who teach students about Anabel's in their classes, especially in other classes focused on food or nutrition or business. There are a lot of students who say that this is one of the cornerstones and one of the key components of their Cornell experience, not only because of our accessibility, but also because of some of the events we provide. Just as an example, we hosted a big free community dinner with Dillman Hill Student Farm last fall that attracted over 300 students at Cornell, undergraduates and graduate students. And so even people who don't necessarily shop at Anabel's regularly were there at that event, and it was a great community building opportunity and an opportunity to learn not only about our student-run grocery store, but also our student-run farm. So when it comes to our on-campus impact, I think our impact has been pervasive in many different ways. We're recognized by Cornell Dining as an affordable food resource and by Cornell Health as well. Outside of campus, I've had a smaller number of customers who are from the wider Ithaca area who also value the store. And equally as importantly, I think working with vendors has been really valuable. Many of our vendors really love working with Anabel's and particularly love working with students. For most of our vendors, they don't really have customers like Anabel's, and they don't really have partnerships like Anabel's. They don't really partner with student-run initiatives, and this is kind of like a one-off partnership for them, but it's something that they've loved to cultivate over time because they like working with students and they like getting to know students who are so passionate about the local food system. And so it's been really rewarding, not only for students here, but I hope for our vendors as well. And something that I always like to give a plug to is during my Saturday shifts last semester, it happened more than once when high schoolers came to the store with their families. So students who were in their junior or senior year of high school and had heard of Anabel's through some channel. And when they were coming to visit Cornell, they wanted to pay a visit to the store and said that they had heard about it, and it was one of the reasons that they wanted to come to Cornell because they wanted to be involved in Anabel's, and they wrote about Anabel's in their college application essays. So that's been really rewarding too. I'm not actually sure how these students found out about Anabel's, but to see that high schoolers are learning about it and that it's a motivating factor for them to come to Cornell is really cool.
That's fantastic, especially during such a time when there's so much turmoil. I mean, as we've seen on our campus, we've seen on other universities' campuses in recent months, and with the current attacks on higher education, it's really really rewarding or really awesome to see a student org that is so passionate about building community and building these connections. So I guess the last question that I have is, where do you see Anabel's in the future? Because you're a senior now. So where do you see Anabel's through your senior year after you graduate? Where do you see it going?
The good thing about Anabel's is that it doesn't depend on any one person, and we have a really robust team of students involved in running the store. And so because of that, I'm very hopeful that this will continue to grow even after I graduate. There are a lot of students who continue to learn about the store, and more students are interested in it every year. So my hope is that students will continue to take the class. Students will continue to take the initiative to become leaders within the store and to organize new initiatives within the store. And just as the store has continued to grow since we reopened in fall 2021, I'm hopeful that it'll continue to grow well into the future, and that when I come and visit Cornell after I graduate, I'll be able to come back here and see how things are going.
And where do you want to be?
Post-graduation?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. In my senior fall, I'm still trying to figure that out. As I kind of mentioned at the beginning, Anabel's has been one of the highlights of my Cornell education, but my main focus is really wildlife conservation, and a lot of the work that I do is rooted in wildlife conservation. So I'm kind of trying to see if I can pursue opportunities that are at the intersection of wildlife conservation and food systems. So, for example, some of the work I've done in the past involves working with farmers whose crops are impacted by wildlife attacks. And so seeing how I can sort of bridge a connection between those two worlds because those two have grown to be my passion. I'm hoping to do that beyond graduation, either as a graduate student or in some kind of nonprofit work beyond Cornell.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Trisha. Thank you for hosting us today in this
Yeah, of
beautiful
course.
space, and for imparting your wisdom and your experiences with us and our audience. Both I and myself have learned a tremendous amount, and we will definitely be visiting in the coming weeks. So again, we wanted to extend a big thank you to Trisha for so generously sharing her experiences during the second episode of this pilot season. Trisha's contact information will also be included along with the recording when that email is sent out or when the recording is released on our website. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you for joining us for our second episode of our pilot series, Redefining Business. Future episodes of this pilot series will be released periodically throughout fall 2025 and spring 2026. And don't forget to join us for our live classical version of Finding Your Future in Food Systems, which will be recorded live on select Wednesdays from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or will be available shortly after those filmings on our NAFSN website. And lastly, to conclude, on behalf of our entire productions team here at NAFSN, including Natalie, Kim, Vivian, Allie, Ari, Akela, Audrey, Emily, Wendy, Daniela, Marie, Aya, myself, and also with our guest speaker today, Trisha, we thank you for being here with us today. And we hope to see you at the next episode of Finding the Future in Food Systems, whether synchronously or not. And until then, we wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Finding Your Future in Food Systems, produced by the North American Food Systems Network. To learn more about our professional development opportunities, visit foodsystemsnetwork.org.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.